I'm J.G. Michael, and this is Parallax Views.
Hey there, what you're about to hear is an excerpt from an episode of Parallax Views with J.G. Michael, a podcast examining politics, history, and pop culture from perspectives you may not have considered before. The following is from a conversation with Ross Benish about his new book, 1999, The Year Low Culture Conquered America and Kickstarted Our Bizarre Times. In this excerpt, you'll hear Ross discuss Beanie Babies, Pokémon, and capitalism. So how does this deregulation even tie into things like, the rise of, well, this is the chapter that I was really interested in. Beanie Babies and Pokemon cards, and I guess the Pokemon games, too.
Yeah, well, so I'll tie it to Pokemon first. That's a little easier. In the 80s, under Reagan, the FCC deregulated advertising allotments. So, before, you used to only be able to have so many commercial minutes per hour of TV. So there was no infomercials. You weren't even allowed to have the Hot Wheels commercial or the Hot Wheels cartoon because it was perceived as a commercial for the toy. So Ninja Turtles wouldn't have been allowed. G.I. Joe, all these shows that are now called program length commercials, where they started as a piece of merchandise. They made a show around it to sell the merchandise. IP used to have to originate in a different way due to the commercial restraints. When Reagan lifted that, you could basically have as much commercial time as you want. You could have, your shows instructing kids to buy stuff, more or less. There's not really any watchdogs coming down on it. So something like Gotta Catch 'Em All and Pokemon would not have been allowed without the deregulation of the 80s. They were just taking what Ninja Turtles and G.I. Joe did and being way more aggressive and successful with it. And then they did that across... God, they did that across so many formats with the games and the cards and the merchandise and the anime, the movies. I mean, to Pokemon's credit, they made a bunch of different series of things interlock with each other in an interesting way. But at the time, Newsweek and Time and all these other places said that they were a pasteurized Ponzi scheme that were ruining kids' lives because they were turning them into ruthless day traders. But I think most kids were just having fun playing Pocket Monsters with their friends.
I sometimes forget how much of a pushback there was against Pokemon. Yeah, I mean, you had evangelical preachers saying it was the stuff of the devil. The psychic Uri Geller was yelling about it because there was a Pokemon that had the spoons. Kadabra, I think, was the name of the Pokemon. But Uri Geller was like, "Oh, these are demon entities. Why are they associating me with this?"
There's a funny article. Well, there's a funny article in '99 about a pastor in Colorado who leads a burning of Pokemon. And he actually decapitates some of the toys with a sword. And then, he gave interviews that, we're doing this for a reason. We're not theatrical like the World Wrestling Federation. And he's, cutting up freaking stuffed animals with a sword in a very public display. It's, the most theatrical thing. So, it's funny, right? Because they're just little stuffed animals in Japanese anime, but people freaked out about it.
I mean, that's what's crazy about it, though, too. They're just little stuffed animals, an anime and a video game, but it takes over the world. I think at this point, it's on par with, or has even surpassed in terms of how much money is made, something like Star Wars.
Yeah, I think it's made the most IP ever from I think it's made the most licensing revenue ever from an IP. I don't know if it was Statista put that study out. There was a study in the last 2 years that was Pokemon revenue exceeds everyone in licensing, which is just absurd.
And it took over the world. It took over the world. I was part of that. I was, I mean, I remember my dad got angry because, I was so obsessed with Pokemon that I would take he used to record the pay-per-views of WWF. So the pay-per-views, even the In Your House ones. And I was so obsessed with Pokemon, I wanted to record every episode of the show. So I ended up taping over some of the WWF pay-per-views he'd collected and taped.
Oh, that would suck, man, because that was before, he didn't have the WWE network. Like, when is he going to watch WrestleMania 7 again? Like, you'd have to go buy that.
I was like
the
5 or
VHS
6 at the time.
I'm impressed you're able to set the VCR.
My mom helped me with that. He was very
Okay.
angry with her.
So, with Pokemon, though, they're the biggest children's fad of that time, but what predates them is Beanie Babies, and the Beanie Babies, like, fad itself, which, God, they were not as big as Pokemon, but they were super, super huge for a brief moment. There were robberies and fights and murders over Beanie Babies, divorcing couples being forced to divide their Beanie Baby assets in court, taking turns picking them in a courtroom, just absolute absurd stuff. But the way that reflects deregulation is it's like reflective of the crazy financial stuff that's happening at the time with the dot-com bubble. Like, the Beanie Babies are so much like the speculation happening with all those dot-com bubbles where everyone all those dot-com companies at the exact same time where everyone's just putting down money, thinking this thing is going to explode. The valuation just skyrockets, and then it just plummets down to earth even faster than it skyrockets. Everyone sits there wondering what the hell just happened to me. So, it's like it's like Gordon Gecko come to life in a stuffed animal. But there's nothing with media deregulation specifically for Beanie Babies because they didn't have a TV show or a video game, because Ty Warner is like a weird recluse dude who just wanted to do that one product, and he pushed away all those opportunities.
I don't really remember the Beanie Babies fad as much, but why was it important?
Good for you.
To talk about that in the book.
Well, it was important for me to talk about it because I wanted to tie into some of the crazy financial schemes that happen now, and that was the most fun way to do it to the 90s. So, like, some of the crypto pump and dump schemes, some of the stuff that's happened with NFTs, where
how would you compare the two? Like, how does the Beanie Babies stuff compare to, like, NFTs? I think my listeners would be interested in hearing you elaborate.
That's fair. That makes sense. It's not necessarily intuitive, and maybe they'll think I'm full of shit, which is totally fine, and that's their opinion. So both of them are predicated on selling someone scarcity that does not exist, inflating a market way past a reasonable price, and just driving mania to something so that you get this community of collectors who is really built up on, like, being into this thing, and that they just talk each other into buying more and more, and that becomes perpetuating until the bubble pops in a very painful way. Like, they're collectibles, but they weren't treated as such. They were treated as financial instruments, even though they're just collectibles. And a lot of some people made money, some are valuable, but most people lost their ass in both cases. And just kind of the desire to go out and collect rare NFTs just reminded me a lot of the desire of suburban house moms going store to store to get those Beanie Babies in the 90s.
That we could also get into the Pokemon cards with regards to that, I assume, as well.
Yeah, you could. Pokemon cards are a little more stable. What I say in the book is, like, Beanie Babies is the excesses of capitalism, and the dot-com bubble as well. But Pokemon's more like the status quo of, like, some crazy stuff happens here and there, but for the most part, just new products continuing to emerge to drive rampant consumerism. But, like, people are fine with it because it brings them joy, and God, they're still around and will be forever. Beanie Babies are around, but they're a small footprint of what they used to be. Like, they just have a few licensed toys in, like, Walgreens and big retailers now. They're not a huge sensation. Whereas Pokemon's licensing revenue in 2023 was still among the top among any intellectual properties in the world.
Was it interesting for you looking at the whole phenomena of Beanie Babies and Pokemon from the perspective of, well, how did capitalists look at this phenomenon and how they sort of used it to their advantage? Because it is I think you call it the embodiment of capitalism in the 90s.
It was fun, and there was there's scholarly papers about Pokemon, about, like, it being capitalism and indoctrinate, like, gotta catch them all, like, if you had to have a great slogan to drive the consumer economy, You probably couldn't come up with something better than that. So there have been serious thinkers who have thought about some of this stuff before. With Beanie Babies, the craziest capitalist enterprise of it all was authentication services. There's like, you see this with anything that blows up. There's always a constellation of services that come and hover around to suck the money out. There were these people who would pay $25, which is 4 to 5 times the retail value of the Beanie Baby itself, to like examine your Beanie Baby and verify if it's authentic or not. So you'd buy something for $5, pay someone $25 to authenticate it, and then, try to sell it on eBay for $500 if they said it was real. What a crazy world.